Today, we're diving into something just absolutely fascinating. We're talking about how the world's oceans actually act as this massive, submerged museum of human history. Forget the dusty shelves and traditional archives, right? Some of the most incredible pieces of our past are locked away deep underwater, just waiting to be discovered.
20. That's the staggering number of feet below the ocean's surface, where a mysterious 2,500-year-old shipwreck was recently found near Sicily. I mean, just 20 feet. That is incredibly shallow. Basically, any amateur diver could easily reach that depth on a quick weekend trip.
So that brings us to the obvious question, right? How on earth could a massive ship stay hidden under just 20 feet of water for 25 centuries? Well, it wasn't exactly sitting out in the open like some pirate ship from a Hollywood movie. Over the millennia, violent storms and shifting ocean currents completely buried this thing under thick layers of sand and rock. Honestly, it just looked like another lump on the seabed. To finally find it, researchers basically had to play a high-tech game of hide-and-seek. They used advanced sonar scanning to pick up these unnatural straight lines, patterns that the sand had literally been hiding for centuries. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our global, chronological roadmap for uncovering the secrets of these underwater artifacts today. We're going to start with the Sicily shipwreck mystery, then look at ancient mariners and trade, explore the age of exploration, cover accidental discoveries near home, and finally, wrap things up with the ocean's time capsule. Moving right into Section 1, the Sicily shipwreck mystery, a 2,500-year-old mystery. I want to transport you back in time for a second, right back to the 5th or 6th century BCE. Picture the ancient world where the Mediterranean Sea was the ultimate global superhighway. And right smack in the middle of it all was Sicily, home to Mount Etna. Because of where it sits, Sicily was essentially the ultimate toll booth for all this massive maritime traffic. Now, what archaeologists found in these waters is an absolutely brilliant illustration of a super rare shell-first construction technique. So instead of building an internal frame and nailing wood to it, like you'd expect, these ancient Greek builders actually joined the planks edge to edge first. They basically snapped together a giant wooden puzzle and then added the internal ribs later for support. This unique method was only used for a very brief window in Greek shipbuilding, making this wreck an incredibly rare glimpse into ancient naval experimentation.
But here's what makes this discovery truly wild. It's the timeline clash. The original ship's wood is so incredibly degraded that experts don't even know what kind of tree it was made from. But as part of the ongoing Kalkanana project, which has been running since 2017, divers stumbled upon something else. They found 2 iron anchors nearby, shaped like upside-down T's. The catch? These anchors actually date to the 7th century CE. That is more than 1,000 years after the ship sank. It just goes to show that this single site holds multiple, stacked layers of human history, all just waiting to be untangled.
Let's zoom out for just a second to really appreciate the sheer scale of the chronological journey we're exploring today. We are looking at a timeline stretching from 2700 BCE, a time when the Egyptian pyramids were literally still under construction, all the way to a Wisconsin schooner from modern American history in 1871. It's just a vast expanse of time spanning across continents, all perfectly preserved by the salty waters of the sea.
Let's transition over to Section 2, Ancient Mariners and Trade. Trade in the Old World.
So let's step back and see exactly how these specific ships fit into the massive ancient trade networks that were completely fueling empires across the Mediterranean. To understand this, we just need to look at the major players. You had the Greeks coming from the east and the Carthaginians from the west. Now, they fought bitterly over Sicily for about 350 years, basically just to control the incredibly lucrative flow of olive oil, wine, ceramics, and metals. But you also had the legendary Phoenicians operating over near Spain. These guys were brilliant mariners, trading heavily long before Rome was even an empire. In fact, they were likely the very first sailors to use the North Star to navigate those dark, terrifying open waters.
And hey, speaking of those legendary Phoenicians, let me introduce you to the Mazaron II. This is a remarkably well-preserved 2,600-year-old Phoenician trading ship that was discovered off the coast of Murcia, Spain back in the 1990s. What made this ship's route so vital was actually its cargo. Among other things, it carried incredibly expensive purple dye sourced all the way from Lebanon. I mean, this was a luxury item so extraordinarily pricey that literally only the absolute wealthiest elites of the ancient world could even dream of getting their hands on it. Moving right along to Section 3, the Age of Exploration, Vasco da Gama's voyage. Now let's jump to a completely different continent and see how all of this builds. We're heading down to Africa to uncover what is basically a crucial, missing chapter in the book of global exploration. We're talking about the Sound George. Found nestled beautifully in Kenyan coral reefs, this wreck is believed to be directly tied to the famous explorer Vasco da Gama. Specifically, it's thought to be from his final voyage. And why is this such a big deal? Well, because his 1498 expedition was the single trip that opened up the direct Europe to Asia's spice route by sea, a move that made Portugal unbelievably rich. If confirmed, this wreck is one of only 8 Portuguese ships from that defining era resting in the Indian Ocean.
Now let's sharply contrast the two modern archaeological approaches for the wrecks we just discussed. With the Spanish Mazaron II, it faced total destruction from shifting sands. Archaeologists realized they couldn't just leave it there, so they literally had to lift it out of the water, plank by plank, piecing it back together like uncovering a giant dinosaur skeleton just to keep it from crumbling. But on the flip side, the Kenyan wreck of the San Jorge remains completely submerged. It is intentionally preserved right there in place to serve as this stunning underwater museum, specifically hoping to inspire everyday divers who pursue this incredible hobby.
Let's bring things a bit closer to home with Section 4, Accidental Discoveries Near Home. Discoveries near home.
I really want to bring this story a bit closer to home, just to show you that you don't always need millions of dollars in high-tech scanning gear or some massive team of professional archaeologists to stumble upon history. Get this, recently, a dad and his 5-year-old daughter were simply out on a normal fishing trip in the shallow waters of Lake Michigan, right off the coast of Wisconsin. As they looked down, the moving sands beneath their small boat suddenly revealed the remains of a 150-year-old wooden schooner. It was later identified as the George L. Newman, which was a vessel everyone had assumed was lost forever back in 1871. It is just such an incredible, accessible reminder that history is quite literally sitting right beneath us.
And you know, the George L. Newman has its own tragic little micro-mystery attached to it. This ship didn't sink in some massive naval battle or a hurricane. It actually ran aground because the crew was completely blinded by thick, heavy smoke blowing off the land from the 1871 Peshtigo fire. Now, you might not have heard of that fire, but it still remains the deadliest wildfire in recorded history. It was tragically overshadowed and totally forgotten by the media simply because the Great Chicago Fire happened on the exact same day. So this little ship serves as a perfect untouched time capsule from a very specific, tragic day in American history.
And that brings us to our final stop, Section 5, the ocean's time capsule, the oldest shipwrecks.
For this final section, let's uncover the absolute oldest shipwreck ever found, and really just take a second to reflect on the profound realization of what our global waters truly hold. We're going all the way back to the 1970s, when divers near Greece discovered the Dakos wreck. This site dates back to between 2700 and 2200 BCE. Unsurprisingly, absolutely no wood from the hull survived that much time underwater. It completely dissolved into the sea. But what did survive were hundreds of clay pots, vases, stone anchors, and millstones just scattered right across the seabed. So the crucial point here is that while the ship itself is completely gone, its priceless cargo proves beyond a doubt that humans were successfully sailing and trading by sea far, far earlier than many historians ever believed.
I think this quote truly captures the essence of our journey today. The ocean is basically one giant storage unit for human history. And honestly, that is the main takeaway you should remember here. We so often think of history as something dug up from the dirt, but beneath every tragic sinking, every storm-tossed vessel is a perfect sealed time capsule. It shows us exactly how our ancient ancestors lived, what they valued, how they traded, and just how bravely they traveled out into the great unknown.
All of this leaves us with one massive, incredibly provocative question. What forgotten fleet will today's underwater robots and scanning gear discover tomorrow? With technology advancing at just an unprecedented rate, we're now able to explore the dark depths of the ocean in ways past divers literally only dreamed of. The next big discovery might just rewrite the history books all over again. Keep your eyes on the horizon, stay curious,